Today's daf we're going to be learning is Ketubot, daf Pechet, Shavuot Tov to everyone. Today's daf is sponsored by Heather Stone in loving memory of her mother, Ellie Stone, Esther Bina Bat Avraham Halevi, Rachel Leah, on her 11th year at site. She taught us by example to protect the Jewish community. May her neshama have an aliyah. Today's daf is sponsored by Debbie Pine and Mark Orenshine in loving memory of Florence Pine, Fega Bat Sarah Rivka on her 2nd year at site. The memory of her warm smile and kind heart inspires us every day. May her neshama have an aliyah. We're going to get started with the bottom of our daf. We have to just remember where we are standing. So the Mishna at the bottom of Pei Zayin, maybe even it pays to start with reviewing the last 3 Mishnayot that we saw, because at some point today we're going to make reference to all of them. So let's go through very quickly as an introduction to today's class. First Mishnah is on Pei Vav Amud Bet near the top, the first about a third of the way down. If somebody makes his wife a chinvanit or mina bitropia, she's in charge of his property, then he can make him swear anytime he wants. She has to take an oath that she handled the money properly, all that. Rabbi Lezer disagrees and says not only if he made her not be tropi or chivanit, he can actually make her swear about anything in the house, that she didn't take any of the dough and give it to someone else, or that she handled the wool that she was spinning properly. Okay, so that's the first Mishnah. Second Mishnah was, what if he promises her, as opposed to this Mishnah where he can make her take oaths? What if he committed to her in the beginning of the marriage? You won't have to take an oath. Okay? And then we saw all sorts of levels where first he says, you and me, right? You won't have to swear to me, but that would mean that she could have to take an oath to his children, that he could make someone who is in her place, he could make her heirs swear. So the first one was very limited. Then we kept going more and more. He says, not me, not anyone who comes in place of me, or not you or anyone who comes in place of you. Okay. And then he can't make her swear at all. And then the last case of that Mishnah was, but once, even if, let's say the first case where he said, you don't have to swear to me, but after he dies, if she then, okay, or she goes back to her father-in-law's house or her parents' house and never handles his money, then even though he said, you won't have to take an oath to me, but theoretically his children could make her take an oath. They can't make her take an oath either. They can only make her take an oath if she starts handling his possessions. Then if he never included them in his statement, then his heirs could make her take an oath. That was all from Pei Vav Amud Bet. Then the Mishnah on Pei Zayin, the next Mishnah, started talking about all sorts of cases where the woman needs to swear in ketuba cases, okay, where she took part of the ketuba during his lifetime, she can only get the rest if she swears. If one witness comes forward and says she gave back the ketuba, or he gave back the ketuba already, then, and she claims, I never got my ketuba money, and she has the ketuba in hand, she would have to swear to get the ketuba because there's one witness against her. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the other cases in the Mishnah. We'll get to them as we get there, but that's the case that we're up to right now. The whole review I did is going to be more relevant to the second part of today's daf, but I wanted it to already be in your head, and then when we get there, you'll see. So now, the Gemara had said the last thing we saw in the Gemara was first, someone, who was it? It was Rami Bar Chama tried to say, when one witness testifies that he already paid back the ketuba, and she has to take a Shevuot, we're talking about a Shevuot midoraita, a Torah law oath. Comes Rava and says, no, I've got 2 problems with what you said. Number one, in general, the Torah oaths are nishba'in velo mishalmin. It's if one witness comes and says that something that's in your property, someone is claiming is theirs, you can swear to keep it in your property. Here, the swear is for her to get money from him. That's not the general oath by Torah law. It's not shua no nishba v'notel. To actually, she wants to collect money with this swear, with this oath. Secondly, there's no way that this could be a proper oath by Torah law because there's a law that he claims, the Eid Echad claims that the husband doesn't owe her any kind of lien property. There's no such thing as a Shevuot in that case by Torah law. Shevuos apply when you're having, let's say, I loaned you money and you I say I paid you back and you say you didn't pay me back. That's if it's a milva baal peh, an oral one where there's no shiabu karko. That's where generally we have a Shevuot Eid Echad. Or you claim, like I said before, this object that's in my house you claim is yours. I claim to keep it in my house. That has nothing to do with lien on property. Liens on property, there's no Shevuot by Torah law. So, okay, what's the difference, Torah law, rabbinic law? So it's actually a big debate among the commentaries. Rashi says here, okay, if you look at the second Rashi on the page, on the first line of Rashi on Pechet, Lidei Shevuah de'oraita, shehi b'shem o b'kinoy, you use the name of God, ochez sefer biyado, you hold a Torah in your hands, and that's chamura hima od, Rashi says. It's a very strict type of oath, as opposed to, he says in a very interesting language, I thought you'd like this, aval shvuah de Rabbanan, I'm now on the third line of Rashi on page Pechet, klala ba'alma ke'en shalanu. It's just a curse, like we do nowadays, right? Which is like, we always say, I swear. People use this word flippantly, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't say that. It's shvuah, right? How much, when we say I swear, how much do you really mean it? And sometimes you don't really mean it. So a swear is like saying, I swear. That's an oath by rabbinic. That's all she has to say. She has to say, I swear I never got the ketuba money, period. She doesn't have to use God's name. She doesn't have, no. What's the difference? Well, the difference is very serious. People flippantly use the words, I swear. So she could try to be lying and say, I swear, and she doesn't really care. But if you have to make her take a Shevuot, mita oraita, Torah oath, she has to use God's name. She has to hold the Torah in her hand. That's already, she's not going to lie like that. And it's like they do in court, right? You have a book of the Bible, and swear to tell the truth. That's like a much more serious ma'amad. Now, some people disagree with Rashi and even point out, Tosfot says that Rashi contradicts himself, because in a different place where he talks about Shevuot, he actually says that the Shevuot de Rabbanan is also with the God's name and also with a Torah. And then Tosfot says it must be there's a difference, okay? And then there's a whole debate about what the differences are, but we'll stick with Rashi, what he says here, even though he does contradict himself elsewhere. The main thing you really have to know is that obviously it's more severe if it's a Torah law oath. And that's going to make us understand better why Rav Papa makes the following suggestion. Amar Rav Papa, I pikeachu. Now starting at the top of our note. If you're smart, Rav Papa's giving you advice. If you're smart, you would do the following. In other words, even you're the husband claims he gave the money back to her already. She claims I never got the money. And he wants her to have to take an oath. But he wants her to take the most serious oath possible, because he's worried if she takes the lenient Shevuot de Rabbanan, maybe she'll just lie under oath because she doesn't really care. It's not as severe. If he makes her take a Torah oath, that will prevent her from lying. So if you want to get her to make a Torah oath, you basically have to switch. You have to fix the two problems that Rava said. You have to have it that it's not nishba ve'eno, right? That it's nishba ve'eno mishalem, that she's going to swear to not pay. And you're going to make it that there's no shibud karka involved. There's no lien property that they're disagreeing with. So how do you do that? Now, his suggestion is going to be rejected, and I would say edited or fixed up, because this really is a little bit strange. So if you think it sounds weird, don't worry. Gemara is going to say this really doesn't make a lot of sense at all. But they're going to then fine-tune it twice. It's going to need two fine-tunes to get to the proper way that one could do this. So he suggests, right? So if you want to get her Shevuot d'oraita, this is what you do. He claims he paid her back the money on the 1st of January, let's say. And he has one witness that says, I saw her, you pay the money back on the 1st of January. Now, what happened? Yav la ketubata, so now it's the 1st of February. He should give her the ketuba again, be'apechad sadeh, in front of one witness. So now, let's say it was a 200 zuz ketuba. He gave her 200 zuz in January. Now he gives her again 200 zuz. V'samich sada kama asada batlam. He now combines the two testimonies. He now has one witness that saw him give 200 zuz and another witness that saw him give 200 zuz. So altogether, he has two witnesses that prove that he gave her the ketuba money. Now, why does this help him? Well, umokim lehu lahanach kamai b'milvin. Basically, he's going to say, okay, well, we have two witnesses now that say, I paid you back my ketuba, so I clearly don't owe you the ketuba anymore. But I now have one witness that testified on the 1st of January that I gave you money. That money is a loan. Give me back that money. So you owe me now 200 zuz because I gave you a loan. Now, once he turns it into a loan, and he has one witness that proves that he gave her a loan, now, if she wants to not pay back the money, she would have to take an oath. So we've switched the oath to a Shevuot nishba ve'eno mishalem. The money just stays where it is if she's willing to swear. And it's also not kfirat shibud karkaot, because it's just money he's claiming back from her. So at this point, that's what's a little weird about the case, and that's what they're going to comment on, is that you're using the one witness to both say she's paid back the ketuba and to say she took a loan, even though they're talking about the same 200 zuz. You're playing with this one witness and you're using him to kind of say two things, even with one testimony. It's a little bit weird, which is why Matkifla Rav Sheshet, Rav Shisha Bered Rav Idi. How can you possibly connect witness one with witness two? And again, there's a bit of a debate about what they're claiming. Either you can't say there's two witnesses that say he gave her her ketuba, because you can't combine. One said January, one said February. That's two different things. But the truth is, the Gemara elsewhere says that. Like if someone says, Mana li biyadcha, I gave you money, and he brings a witness that says, I gave you money on Sunday, and he brings another witness that says, I gave you money on Monday. In the end, each one's saying, I gave you money on different days, but it doesn't matter because they're both saying, I gave you money. So that actually does work. So therefore, I think the better question is to say that you're using him to both say he paid her back the ketuba money and say he gave her a loan. That's what's tricky here. You're kind of connecting him with the other thing and then also separating him. It just doesn't make sense. So Ela Amo Rav Shisha Bered Rav Idi, he gives a different, like I said, it's a fine tuning of Rav Papa. He says, when he gives her the ketuba on the 1st of February, the second time, he gives that in front of the first witness and another witness. Now, the commentaries say, by the way, it could be any two witnesses. It doesn't have to be. It's just easier if you use the same person, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, the first witness stays with his testimony about what happened in January. That stands independently of the second testimony, which is a purely good testimony because he did it in front of two witnesses. As soon as he pays her ketuba money in front of two witnesses. And then he says, oh, but by the way, a month ago, I have one witness that comes and says, I gave you 200 zuz. So that is a loan. And as soon as that's a loan, if she wants to not pay back that money because she claims that never happened, she'd have to swear to keep the money in her hands. And again, it wouldn't be kfirat shibud karka. This actually seems to work. Okay, so again, and then the first witness is basically a loan. Okay, it's basically turning what he said was a ketuba payment into a loan. As soon as you turn it into a loan, the one witness can actually cause her to take an oath. Rav Ashi brings a different problem to this, a side problem, which is you have to remember, she still has the ketuba document in her hand. So what does she say? She says, that first payment you're claiming, that was a different ketuba. She could claim we had two ketubas. Now, why on earth would a woman have two ketubas? So the commentators explain, let's say he gave her a lot of money. Let's say he gave her a 400 zuz, right? This is a case of 200 zuz. He gave her 400 zuz for the ketuba. It was such a big amount that they split it into two documents so that he didn't want her to claim it all at one time. So he gives her two different documents, one for 200, one for 200. So when he tries to turn it into a loan retroactively, she says, what are you talking about? That was our first ketuba, and you still owe me for our second ketuba. In other words, that was only half the amount. And I don't have a shtar for it because we ripped up the shtar for the first one, but I have a shtar for the second one, and you clearly didn't give that to me yet. And then she has a good claim, right? And then we can't say retroactively, right, that it turned into a loan because she could claim it was my ketuba that you paid me. In which case, it's kfirat shibud karkaot, in which case she doesn't have to swear. There's no oaths for that. So Ela Amar Rav Ashi has to fine-tune this a little bit more. And he said, well, you're right, Rav Shisha. It is a case where there was one witness on the first. He now brings two witnesses and pays the ketuba. And then he claims it was a loan. He can only do that if who did modelahu. He told them this whole thing in the beginning. You know, who did he tell and what? It's a big debate. Rashi says he told the two witnesses, when he went to pay the ketuba in front of them, he explained to them what he was doing. And he explained to them that he was retroactively going to make that other one a loan. And once he has what we call full disclosure, he was honest about the whole thing from the beginning. And then if she tries to claim it was my ketuba money, since he already preempted and explained his side, she's not believed. And this is where the difficulty in Rashi comes. He says at the end, he has to add one more thing, which is it's milta de lo shchicha. It's not a very common thing for a woman to have two ketubos. And that's why her claim is weakened against his claim where he came forward with full disclosure in the beginning. it still doesn't explain why he's believed over her, because it's really his word against hers. Some people claim that he actually did it in court in front of her, and she didn't say anything in the beginning. And then, right, and as he explained that there was this loan and she didn't deny it, and then later she comes and denies it, and maybe that's the problem. She didn't deny it at the beginning. A little bit tricky how this resolves it, but this, according to Gemara, Rav Ashi is resolving the problem that she can't claim two ketubas if he has full disclosure in the beginning about what he's doing here. So in any case, this was all to explain Rav Papa's suggestion, which was a little bit of a weird suggestion, which again, we fine-tuned to get it right, that how can he turn the Shevuot de Rabbanan into a Shevuot de Oraita? It's just a suggestion. The husband is really concerned that she's lying and wants to make sure that she's not going to lie under oath and wants to make it a more severe thing. He can do this kind of, solution of almost fictitiously, right, turning the first one into a loan. Next part of the Mishna. The Mishna said, if she collects from Nechasim Meshuabadin, she wants to go get her ketuba from lien property, or also from the orphans, and that's the really important part here. She wants to get her money from orphans, she has to swear. So Tnan Hatam, they now quote a Mishnah in Masechet Shevuot on Daf Mem Hey. B'chein hayitomim lo yiparu ela b'shvuah. Okay, so the yitomim, I want to stop for a minute because I see the comment here about this shows bad marriages. First of all, you have to remember at this point they're divorced. So obviously we all know that many times, not always, but in divorce cases, there's often monetary issues going on here. She claims, I didn't get my ketuba money. He says, I gave it to you, right? You can imagine fights would ensue over this. It doesn't really show bad marriages. It's bad marriages, right? Marriages that ended, that often there's stress and fighting after that. Not always, but there are cases where we see that. So now, and again, it's like the beginning of the Masechet, his word versus her word, right? You don't really know. So again, he has one witness, that's strong. But the question is one witness strong enough in this case to actually make her take an oath or not? In the end, we said not by Torah law, only by rabbinic law. But next, so it's non-hatam. The Mishnah here says, even orphans can't collect, let's say, a loan back unless they swear. To which the Gemara says, Miman, who are they making swear? Okay, if let's say I'm an orphan and I'm collecting a loan that my father was owed from the person who he borrowed the money from directly. So, and then it's saying, I can only get my money back if I swear. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Hashta, we're always trying to help orphans, right? Make it easier for them. Hashta avian shaka below shvuah beinu b'shvuah. If my father were alive, he would be able to demand that loan without swearing directly from the borrower. So of course, I shouldn't have to swear. We're not going to make it harder for me than it would be if my father were alive. Ela hachi kamar. So it must mean the following. I'm trying to get it. I'm an orphan. My father had a loan with a so-and-so. He died also. And now I'm trying to get it from his kids. So we're orphans against orphans. So then I would need to swear. That makes sense because anyone who takes from orphans has to swear, even if the other side are orphans also, right? The creditor are orphans. I'm a Rabbi Zreika, I'm a Rabbi Yehuda. Again, we're going to have a statement that doesn't really make sense. In this case, instead of other people coming up with different answers, they're going to reread what Rabbi Zreika says because what he said doesn't really make sense. But first, let's read it. We'll understand what he says, and then we'll figure out the second way to read what he said. So Rabbi Zreika says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Lo shanu ela, we're limiting this. Orphans need to swear to other orphans if they're trying to get a loan back. Ela she'amru yitomim amar lanu abba liviti uparati. I say, my father lent money to your father. And you say, our father told us on his deathbed that I borrowed money from Michelle's father, but I paid it back already. In that case, if I want to get the money, I have to swear that he did not pay me back. But if he says, I didn't borrow any money from Michelle ever on his deathbed, I can't ever get that money back. It's interesting. Why is that? Because if he says, I never borrowed money, what's the difference between saying I never borrowed money to I borrowed money and I paid it back? If I borrowed money and I pay it back, we're in the Suffolk land. We don't know, so we allow me to take a Shevuot. If he says I never borrowed money, it's for sure he's telling the truth. Why? So there's an assumption and the commentaries say we're talking about he said it on his deathbed. Now, there's an assumption that people don't lie on their deathbed. Okay, it's a reasonable assumption. People might not lie, but they might get a little confused. So if he says, I never borrowed money, you don't get confused about whether a loan happened or not. If he says, I never borrowed money from Michelle's father, he was obviously telling the truth. But if he says, I borrowed money from Michelle's father and I paid him back, then it could be he just got a little confused with who he paid, which loan he paid back and which loan he didn't pay back. And if I claim my father never got the money, then again, I would have to take a Shevuot, an oath, because there is some reason to believe him, but not enough reason that I can't ever get the loan back. Whereas if he says, I never borrowed, again, we're going to change this in a minute, so don't get too set on this. But if he said, I never borrowed, my father said he never borrowed, we believe him 100%. And I can't ever get that money back. Matkitla Rava, Adrabba, it's the opposite. Kol omer lo laviti, ke omer lo parati dami. Now remember, what's the problem? I forgot to mention this. This is really important. I have a shtar in my hand. I have a document that says that he borrowed money from my father. So for him to say, right, originally, what would we have said? If the father said, I never borrowed money from Michelle's father, then we believe him, and it must be, I made up the shtar. It's a forgery. Now, there's more reason to believe someone on their deathbed than to believe a shtar, even though a shtar is usually a very good proof, but shtars could always be forged, right? This is something that goes on nowadays all the time, where there's reason to think that people are lying. Okay, this comes up all the time in my husband's work, people proving Jewishness, right? Immigrants from the former Soviet Union come forward with documentation, and the first thing they're hit with is, oh, it's probably forged, because there's reason to believe that people forge documents in the former Soviet Union. That's like a thing, okay? Not that I believe that, but there's a certain amount of the Rabbanit has concern with all sorts of people coming from the former Soviet Union. So it's the same idea here. When there's reason to believe that your document might be forged because there's strong evidence on the other side, again, I'm not saying it's true there, I'm just saying this is what happens, therefore, the documents lose their strength. But comes Rav and he says, what are you talking about? I'm holding a document in my hand. It says there was a loan. What do the children say? Our father said lo laviti. Now, if you say lo laviti, that means I didn't borrow. And if you say I didn't borrow, that means that the father basically was admitting that what? He didn't pay the money back. So I have a document that says you owe money, and you basically admitted your father never paid it back because he said I didn't borrow. I didn't borrow equals I didn't borrow, and therefore I didn't ever pay the money back. So we have basically, they're admitting that they never paid the money back, and I have a document. So kol omer lo laviti, ke omer lo parati dami. It's as if they're saying I never paid the money back. Therefore, it would be all the more so I should get the money. To which they change Rav Zreika and they say, El Idmar Hachid, Amar Rabbi Zreika, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Lo Shanu Ela Sha'amru Yitomim, Amar Lanu Abba Levitiu Parati. That's the same. The oath is in a case where the father said, I borrowed and paid it back. And then because he said I paid it back, and we're worried maybe he got confused as to who, and I still have the document, which means it's really unlikely he paid me back, and he admits there was a loan, then I could get my money back if I take an oath that I know my father never got the money back. Ava amru, but if they say Amar lanu Abba lo laviti, if the father said I never took a loan, now it's the opposite of what we said before. He basically admitted I never paid the money back, and I have a document to show for it, and we don't think it's a forged document. Nifra'in shelo b'shvuah. I can basically get that money back without having to take an oath, because here I have a document that says he took the loan out, and he admitted that he never paid it back because he said never borrowed the money, which means obviously he never paid it back. So therefore, and therefore anyone who says I didn't borrow is like he said I didn't pay back, which means that I can get that money without actually having to take an oath. Okay, because it's so clear that he admitted that he didn't pay it back. Usually you have to swear to orphans because maybe the father paid it back in his life. Here he clearly admitted not. And therefore they change our Reika to say the first part is the exact same thing, that the Shevuot is only in this unique case. And in the other case, you don't even need an oath. You get the money very easily. Next section. The Mishna now says, if you try to get your money back when the husband's not around, okay, your husband went away and you need your ketuba money, or right, let's say you're divorced and you're trying to get the ketuba money and he's not in town, or you want to get your food, okay, we're going to talk about this soon, the difference between them, but lo tiparai ele b'shvuah. You have to go and take an oath. that he didn't leave you money for mizono, let's say, while he was gone. Okay? He said there was a case where this happened. And he said, Lo shanu ela liktubat isha mishum hina. This is only talking about, okay, forget mizono. It's not about mizono. It's only about ketubat isha, meaning, now we're not focusing on the oath part. We're focusing on the fact that the woman can claim her ketuba money when the husband's out of town. Okay, again, ex-husband. Her ex-husband goes out of town. He never paid her the ketuba. She wants to get her ketuba money. She can go to the court and say, I need my ketuba money, seize his assets. Now, that only works for the ketuba of a woman, but it doesn't work for a regular creditor. Why not? This is, okay, we saw before two different approaches to this in the last few dapim between Pei Dalet and Pei Vav. First, we have mishum hina, that when there's money in the hands of a third person, right, when the husband dies, and then the woman's trying to claim it for her ketuba, and the creditor is trying to claim it for his loan, she gets first dibs according to Rabbi Tarfon, hakoshel shabahan, according to Rabbi Yochanan. It meant, Rabbi Tarfon meant, the weaker, which is the woman. Why the woman? Because we want to make sure that women get married, so we want to tell them it's going to be very easy to get your ketuba money if you need it. Otherwise, they won't necessarily want to get married. On the flip side, we have creditors. We have this concept of lotin ol dela b'fnei lovin, and that we saw in Daf Pei Vav, which is the creditors actually have a stronger position, because if we make it hard for them to collect their loans, nobody's ever going to want to loan money. So here comes the Gemara and sides on the side of the woman and said, no. It's more important for ketubat isha, and therefore she has the rights to claim money when the husband's not in town. She can go seize his assets, but a creditor can't do that. Now, it sounds a little bit strange, and in fact, Rava jumps on this and says, what are you talking about? Rava Amar Rav Nachman afilu ba'al chov. Of course a ba'al chov can do this. He says there's no difference between the two, as opposed to where we saw so far, right? One sugya seemed to say women always want to get married, and therefore the creditors were worried about. And the other sugya said, mishum china, we should make sure the women get married and make sure it's easy for them to collect their ketuba money. If you remember, I'm not going to repeat it, but on Pei Dalet we saw there was a machloket Rashi Tosfot. Every time mishum china comes up, that's what it is. Is it, I'll review it quickly because I always find it interesting. Is it, we want to make sure the women get married in the first place and they have money, they know that they're guaranteed money easily when the husband dies, meaning if the husband skips town, they can even collect their money. That would be it here. Or is it after the first marriage is over, we wanted to be able to get a ketuba money quickly so that the men will want to marry the women because they'll have money, right? It'll be easier for her to get remarried. And then it has nothing to do with, by the way, whether women would rather get married or not. It has to do with, are men willing to marry women, right? They want women with more money. So we want to make it easy for her to get her money so that it's easier for her to get remarried, because we know that it's harder for widows to get remarried. So now, and that was all the beginning of our Masechet about the Betula is always gets right more than the Almanah. She's more sought after. Anyway, now we say, Rava says, even the Baal Chov, they're going to be on equal standing. Both of them can collect money from someone who went abroad, because otherwise, right, what will happen? Imagine you borrowed money from someone and you don't want to pay them back. What do? Skip town and you're set, right? He won't be able to seize your assets. You'll be fine. What's going to happen? Every borrower is going to go move abroad. Obviously, not everybody has the means to do this, especially in those days. It wasn't so easy, but you could just skip town for a little while. The guy won't get his money back, and then no one's going to want to loan money because it's so hard to get their money back. So, of course, it's the same. Okay, so we have a debate here about whether, again, is hina a more important issue in ketubat isha, or is Baal Chov on the same level according to this machlok? From here, we're at the end of Amud Aleph till the end of our daf, is all trying to understand Rabbi Shimon in the Mishna. End of this Mishna, and this is why I started our class with previous two Mishnayot, because there's going to be 4 opinions, okay? Each one's going to reject the previous and offer a different suggestion of what Rabbi Shimon is talking about. I'll read Rabbi Shimon in a minute. Is it referring back to that Mishnah, or is it referring back to the Mishnah before that, or is it referring back to the Mishnah before that? Okay, where does Rabbi Shimon's statement refer to? So Rabbi Shimon said, you can look at it at the top of Pei Zayin Amud Bet, Kol Zman, the very beginning of Pei Zayin Amud Bet, Kol Zman Shi Tova Ketubata. He's going to make 2 statements, and this is going to be important to remember because at the end, the question on the third opinion is going to be, you explain the first sentence very well, but you didn't explain the second sentence. They really say itself in the opposite, right? You'll see. They work together, but one is going to say, it would have been enough to just say one line and not both lines. So pay close attention. Anytime she demands her ketuba, the heirs can make her swear. If she doesn't demand her ketuba, okay, we don't know what she is demanding then or what else is going on, they can't make her swear. Now, the simple reading is she's tovat ketubata or tovat mizonot, right? It's either ketuba or food, okay, her food payments, because remember, she gets her food payments until she demands the ketuba. So Rabbi Shimon Ahaya, to what is he referring to? I'm a Rabbi Yirnia, and then therefore, what is his debate with Tanakama? On what issue are they arguing? So Rabbi Yirnia said, it's on the following. What we just said, if she demands the money when the husband's not around, she can only do it with an oath, to which Tanakama holds loshna mizone veloshna l'ketuba, whether it's her food payments, because he went away and didn't leave her food payments, or it's her ketuba payments. She has to basically say, I swear that my husband did not leave any food in the house for me or money for food in the house for me. I swear he didn't leave me his ketuba money, whatever it might be. And then she can demand. And Ata Rabbi Shimon Lameimar, Kozman Shetuvah Ketubata or Shamash B'inota. If it's her ketuba, then she has to take an oath. Moving now to Amubet, Eina Tovah Ketubata, but if it's not her ketuba, but mizonot, food, Ein or Shemash B'inota. They can't demand that she swear. You might have already figured out the problem here, but if not, you'll see in a minute. And in fact, this is the same machloka we find somewhere else, which supports this reading, because if we see other people disagree about this, we can assume they each match up with a different opinion. We're going to see this a few times in this discussion. Ditnan, as it says in the following Mishna, later on in our Masechet, Mishalach leMedinat Hayam, v'ishto tovat mizonot. He went abroad, the husband wants mizonot. Chanan omer, tishava basof v'lo tishava b'tchila. She takes an oath at the end. She doesn't need to take an oath in the beginning. What's the end? The end is when she demands her ketuba, because until that time, she could keep getting mizonot. Okay, so her husband divorced her. He went abroad, and she wants the food payments. And then when she decides, I want my ketuba money, and then there's no more food payments, that would be the sof. Okay, so she only needs to take an oath for the ketuba, not for the mizonot. That obviously matches Rabbi Shimon. The sons of Kohanim Gedolim, must have been a group of people at the time, said, Tishavam b'tchila ubasof. She even needs to take an oath for food payments. And then it's very simple. Rabbi Shimon kechanan, Rabbanan kibnei Kohanim Gedolim. Perfect. What's the problem? The words don't match. If she's getting it when the husband's abroad, what are the Yorshim doing there? Heirs means he died. He didn't die in this case. And Rabbi Shimon says, Yorshim must be in or Yorshim must be in. So, Matkefla Rav Sheshet, hi Yorshim must be in ota, makes no sense, his language. It's very nice. It's good theory. It fits in with another machloket Tanaim. But the words of Rabbi Shimon don't match this at all. What kind of heirs are we talking about? There are no heirs. He hasn't died. Who would be instituting the Shevuot in this case? It wouldn't be the heirs. It would be the Beitin. Who's obviously going to seize his assets? It's the court. So Beitin must be in Otam Abaye. He should have said Beitin if that's what he meant. So it can't be that. So when they reject that, Ela Amar Rav Sheshet, Rav Sheshet says, go back to the previous Mishna. And where in the previous Mishna? The last case of the previous Mishna. And this is why I reviewed at the beginning of class. If we have a woman whose husband promised, I won't make you take an oath in my lifetime, but he didn't say, I won't make my heirs take an oath. Then when he dies and she goes straight back to her father's house, or she's not involved in his possessions at all, even if she was living in his house, they can't make her take an oath about anything. But if she starts handling and managing his assets, so the Tanakhama there said they can make her swear only about things moving forward, but they can't make her take an oath about things in the father's lifetime. V'ata Rabbi Shimon Lameimar, comes Rabbi Shimon and says, Kol zman shetovah ketubata, Yorshim mashbi'inota. He comes and says, wait a minute, the Yorshim can't be mashbi'ota on anything, okay? Only if she demands her ketuba, then they can make her take an oath. But if she's not tova ketubata, okay, if it's something else, basically, here it doesn't mean mizono. Here, if it's they're claiming you mishandled the assets, please take an oath for us. They can't, according to Rabbi Shimon. He's being more lenient on the woman. Okay, now what's their machloket? We're going to show there's another machloket just like this. It's not exactly like this, but it's very similar. It's not. According to Tanakama, we're going to distinguish. Both opinions are going to distinguish, but in the opposite directions. So Tanakama says, if, let's say I'm the person who died, and I appointed before I died my close friend to be in charge of the heirs. So if I appointed my own, then we can make that person have to swear, take oaths about anything they do with the money. Why? Well, the idea is like, or let's say the next, which is if the court found someone, I didn't appoint anyone, and the court had to come in and find someone to be in charge of the orphans. This wasn't a very big money-making thing. Probably they didn't make any money. Okay, they're doing it to be nice. A court-appointed person, lo yishava, we're not going to make them take an oath. Why? Because who on earth would take this job if he knows that he's going to have to take oaths all the time? So people don't like to take oaths. So therefore, in the case where I appointed my friend, I probably did nice things for my friend during their lifetime. Either, you could say tit for tat, or just friends love each other and are happy to do things, even if people are going to make them take oaths. So in that case, we will make them take oaths. But if we want to motivate someone to do a job that nobody else wants to do because I didn't appoint anyone and the court has to come in, the only way we're going to get them to do it is if they don't have to take an oath. And therefore, okay, so now this woman is someone who the father basically appointed her. He's like that. She's the wife. So if that's the case, according to the Tanakama here, Yishaveh, she still needs to take oaths because she was appointed, and we assume she would do it anyway, even if she knew she needed to take oaths. And therefore, that's Tanakama. Okay? Abba Shaul Omer Chilu Fadrin. He says the opposite, and that's going to match Rabbi Shimon. Minuhu Beitin Yishavah. It's actually someone who the court institutes. It's more likely they'll do the job because it's a very prominent thing. The corporate trusts in you. You feel good about it. It's good for your stature in society. So then we make you take an oath. But Minaw Abaye Tomim, right? The friend isn't even alive anymore. What's his motivation? He might not want to do this. So in that case, Lo Yishava. We're not going to make them take an oath. So the woman, according to Abba Shaul, would not have to take an oath. So that's Rabbi Shimon, who says the only time she needs to take an oath is if she's getting her ketuba money. But about all that other stuff, like her handling the assets, she doesn't need to take an oath because she's like an apitropos, sheminu the father. So Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shaul, Rabbanan Rabbanan. Matkefla Abaye. Abaye says this doesn't work. Why? Again, the language of Rabbi Shimon doesn't work. Not because of the Yerushim. That actually works well. It's all about the heirs. But what's the problem? Look at the language. Anytime she demands her ketuba, she'll have to swear. But otherwise, she doesn't. Sounds like Rabbi Shimon is coming to be more strict. Anytime she demands her ketuba, she has to take an oath. Now, according to this, Rabbi Shimon is limiting her need to take an oath from Tanakama. Tanakama says she needs to take an oath, right? Whether it's ketuba or whether it's handling the money. And Rabbi Shimon said, no, we're going to be lenient on this woman. But the language sounds like we're being stricter on her. If you wanted to be lenient, the language should have been im tovat mibayme. If she's demanding her ketuba, that's the only case where she needs to swear, but not otherwise. And then it would be we're being more lenient. So therefore, he thinks the language shows that Rabbi Shimon's being more lenient and not being more strict and not being more lenient. And therefore, we have to find an interpretation, according to Abaye, that's going to show that Rabbi Shimon is actually strict. So to do that, we have to go back to the other part of the second Mishna. Okay, the Mishna at the bottom of Pevav Amabeh, on this. Okay, and then we're basically quoting the beginning of that Mishnah. If he says you won't have to take any vows, then she doesn't have to take any vows, but right, she could have to take vows to his heirs, all that. But what if he says, neder shvua ainli below the yorshai, below abim bershuti alai fa yorshai fa abim bershuteh, right? He basically includes everybody. Ein yachol hashpia lo hu v'lo yorshav v'lo abim bershuto, lo hi v'lo yorshav v'lo abim bershuta. nobody can ever make her take an oath or make her heirs take an oath. So if he says that totally inclusive language, according to Tanakama, she never has to take an oath. Here comes Rabbi Shimon with the Chumrah. Ata Rabbi Shimon Lameimar, there's still one case where she'll have to take an oath. She'll have to take an oath to get her ketuba money. Why is that? It's kamiflage b'plukta d'Abishal ben Yomi Miriam v'Rabbanan. We just saw this. The machloket between them, I think it was on Pesayin. Rabbi Shimon ka'Abishal v'Rabbanan k'Rabbanan. Remember, the rabbi said, if he says this language, even for the ketuba, she doesn't need to. And comes Abishal and says, theoretically, you're right, but what are we going to do? The rabbi said, anyone who demands the ketuba from the orphans has to swear. So there's nothing I could do about it. She's going to have to swear to get her ketuba money. Everything else, like did she mishandle money? Okay, we won't make her swear. But to take money out of the orphan's hands, the rabbi said anyone who takes money out of the orphan's hands has to swear. And therefore, when it comes to the ketuba, she's going to have to swear. So according to Abaye, Rabbi Shimon is holding like Abishal ben Yomi Miriam and saying, in this case, she's going to have to swear just to get her ketuba. Even if he excluded her from any kind of oath ever, doesn't include the ketuba, comes Rabbi Shimon. And Tanakama will say it does include the ketuba because they made an agreement and that overrode the takana of the rabbis. But still, that's going to have a problem. Matkefla Rav Papa, hatinach, and this is, I made reference to this before. That makes sense with line number 1 of what Rabbi Shimon said. He could have stopped after the first line. What did he say? Kol zman shetavak ketubata, right? Yorshimash b'inota. That would have been enough. Because all he's saying is that if she demands the ketuba, she's going to have to swear. He didn't need the second line. Eina tovak ketubata, eina yorshimash b'inota. There was no need to say that. She's not demanding her ketuba. She doesn't need to swear. Of course she doesn't need to swear. He already made this statement that excluded all types of oaths. So, ma'ika l'meimer, how can you explain that line? Ela amar Rav Papa. Now, there's 2 interpretations of Rav Papa. Some think that he's actually giving a whole new interpretation. But we're going to go with the fact that he's just adding on to Abaye. The first line, he explains like Abaye. The first line is coming to say, yes, you will have to swear for your ketuba, even though you don't have to take any other oath whatsoever. But the second line that says, if she's not demanding her ketuba, then she doesn't need to take an oath, is actually referring to something else entirely, which not entirely, but somewhat a different case. We were in the case where he used that inclusive language of him, his heirs. Nobody's ever going to make her take an oath. Now we're talking about what if he didn't exempt her from oaths at all? And then go back to the first Mishna we looked at, which was the Mishna earlier on in Pevav, which is if he makes her into a chenvanit, right? She's in charge of his property during his lifetime, he can make her take oaths. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, he could even make her take oaths on other things, not just the store and managing his money, but even on the wool and on the dough. And comes Rav Papa to explain that what's Rabbi Shimon saying? La fuke mi de Rabbi Eliezer umachlokto. This is a third opinion in that machloket, to disagree with Rabbi Eliezer and the one who Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with, the Tanakama. And what does that mean? What it means is, right, again, let's start with Rabbi Eliezer. He's the most, right? If he didn't exempt her from oaths, he can make his wife all the time take oaths, even on her wool and her dough. Come the rabbis and say, if you put her in charge of your store, he can make her take an oath on the store, not on the dough and the wool. Comes Rabbi Shimon, and in that line, Ein hayorshi must be in it, right? If she's not getting her ketuba, Ein hayorshi must be inota, says the heirs have no rights. Okay, the assumption was that Rabbi Eliezer and Tanakama will hold whatever he can. Remember, when the heirs come in his place, they can make her take those oaths. And comes Rabbi Shimon and says the heirs can never make her take an oath about anything that happened in the lifetime of her husband, even if she was a chenvani, even if, right, they can't make her swear about anything that happened in the husband's lifetime. Doesn't matter if she ran the store. They have no rights. Only have rights if she demands the ketuba, but not on anything else, basically. So that's what that second line is coming to do. And therefore, right, so even if she was not betrothed in his lifetime, the heirs can never come back and demand that she take an oath on something that happened when he was alive, when she was running the store. Okay, and that disagrees with, again, this is a case where he didn't exempt her from oaths. So if he didn't exempt her from oaths, even then, the heirs still have no rights to go back. Whereas the Tanakama, Rabbi Eliezer, would say they can go back, and because what she was then, she could have taken an oath. She could take an oath now, right? They can insist. So he says heirs never have rights to make her take an oath. With that, finished our complicated section of how to understand Rabbi Shimon's approach. We have, as I said, 4 different approaches. Each person raised a difficulty with the previous and then came up with their own theory. And we ended with Rav Papa, who again, according to many interpretations, was just fine-tuning or adding on to Abaye, not necessarily coming up with his own. Some people think, and I just didn't get into it, he actually came up with his own interpretation from scratch. It's rejecting entirely Abaye and saying something new, but I'll leave it at that. Wishing everyone a Shevuot tov.